Alright, we're going to be talking about and taking notes on the heart, which is part of the cardiopulmonary unit that we are currently in. So, we're going to start with an anterior view of the heart. And if you remember back to the first unit, anterior just means a front. So what we're looking at the front of the heart. When you think of your heart in your body, this is going to be the front side, the anterior view of the heart. And over here on the left side, you can see that this is sort of a visual representation. And then on the right side, we have the heart we've taken off some of that muscle so we can see the different chambers, different ventricles of the heart. So the first thing we're going to talk about here is just generally what the heart is. So the heart is a muscular pump made out of cardiac muscle. So we've got this muscle in our body that is pumping or pushing blood through blood vessels. And there are a couple important functions that this blood does in the body. So the first would be blood delivers oxygen, delivers food, nutrients, hormones, and a bunch of other sort of important parts to cells of the body. It's also going to deliver CO2 to your lungs, which then can be exhaled by your body to get rid of that waste. Blood delivers cellular waste to kidneys, and old blood cells are delivered to the liver to be broken down. So blood is doing all of these functions. The heart has 4 chambers in it, and we're going to go through those 4 chambers in a second. This is where blood is held as it advances through the heart. So each of these chambers is going to have a specific role in the movement of blood. And then we have 4 valves. These valves prevent blood from flowing backwards through the heart, and they help to push the blood in the right direction. So we're going to start with our chambers. If you remember from the last slide, we said we have 4 chambers. We're going to start with the right side of the heart, talk about the right atrium and the right ventricle. So let's start with the right atrium. The right atrium is where blood is coming in, and it receives deoxygenated blood from the body, returned via the superior and inferior vena cava. So superior is this right here, and inferior is down here. So we've got blood coming in there at the superior vena cava and the inferior vena cava. Both of those, that blood is flowing into the right atrium. Then we have the right ventricle. This sends deoxygenated blood. So this blood that came into the right atrium is going to proceed into the right ventricle and send that to the lungs to release carbon dioxide and take up oxygen via the pulmonary artery, which is right here. So we're flowing from the right atrium into the right ventricle, and then that's getting pushed into the pulmonary artery, which we'll talk about in a second. Alright, so now we're going to move on to the left side of the heart. Similar to the right side, we've got an atrium and a ventricle. So we'll start with the left atrium. The left atrium receives oxygenated blood from the lungs via the pulmonary vein. So the pulmonary vein, right here, left atrium is circled there, right? That's it's at the top of the heart. That's receiving this oxygenated blood from the pulmonary vein. That blood went to the lungs, got oxygen, and now it's back in the heart. From there, our blood is going to move into the left ventricle. And this pumps oxygenated blood to the body via the aorta. So we're going from the left atrium to the left ventricle, and then we're going to go into the aorta and then get distributed out through the rest of the body. So that's going to go to various points in your body. All right, so next we can talk about the heart valves. So there are various valves in your heart that are going to control the movement of blood. So the first one is going to be the tricuspid valve. So this is the valve between the right atrium and the right ventricle in your heart. So on the right side, right, as deoxygenated blood is coming in, your right atrium, it runs into this tricuspid valve, which is separating the atrium from the ventricle. We also have the pulmonary valve. So the pulmonary valve is going to be between the right ventricle and the pulmonary artery. So that is going to be where the deoxygenated blood is going from your right ventricle into your pulmonary artery. Pulmonary valve is what controls that. The blood will then go to your lungs to be oxygenated. On the other side of the heart, we have the bicuspid valve, which is between the left atrium and the left ventricle, right? So as this oxygenated blood comes from your lungs, separating the left atrium and the left ventricle is the bicuspid valve. Then we're also going to run into the aortic valve, and this is between the left ventricle and the aorta. From there, we can talk about the arteries of the heart. So first, we're going to start with the pulmonary artery. This delivers blood to the lungs from the right ventricle. So the pulmonary artery is right here, where I'm drawing this arrow, and that is taking blood that doesn't have any oxygen, right? Deoxygenated blood into the pulmonary artery and to the lungs from the right ventricle. The aorta, I'll draw that in blue, delivers blood to the body from the left ventricle. So now we've got this oxygen, it's come through the left atrium, the left ventricle, and now it's going to go into the aorta and then out from the aorta into the rest of the body. All right. The next thing we can talk about is veins in the heart. So we've got the pulmonary vein, which returns oxygenated blood from the lungs to the left atrium. So the pulmonary vein is right here, right? That is oxygenated blood going into the left atrium. We also have the vena cava. We've got superior, which is right here, and inferior, which is right here. So superior and inferior, we've got deoxygenated blood going into the right atrium, pulmonary vein, oxygenated blood going into the left atrium. The superior vena cava returns blood from the head, arms, and other parts of your body that are at the top of your body. And the inferior vena cava returns blood from your trunk, your legs, things that are the lower part of your body. Next, we have cardiac arteries and veins. So this is just generally talking about the veins and arteries that serve the heart muscles, that are part of the heart muscles. And they're found on the surface of the heart. You can see in this diagram all the little sort of veins, right? Blue and red, those are the veins that make up the heart. They're found on the surface. Blockages in any of these veins, in any of these arteries, can lead to a heart attack. So whether it's the left coronary artery or the great cardiac vein or any of the other ones, blockages lead to heart attacks. All right, the last thing we're going to cover today is the blood's journey through the body. So we've talked about the various arteries and chambers atrium, ventricle. Now we're going to put that all together into how the blood is actually circulating through the body. So we're going to start in the right atrium, which is right here. So right atrium, you might notice that's in blue, which means that it's oxygen poor, right? So it's oxygen poor, it's deoxygenated, and it's CO2 rich. So it's got lots of CO2, and it doesn't have very much oxygen. From the right atrium, our blood is going to go into the right ventricle. So made a mistake here on my slide. That should say right ventricle. So we go from the right atrium into the right ventricle to the pulmonary artery. So the blood is flowing into the pulmonary artery, and from there it's going to flow into pulmonary capillary beds by your lungs. And these capillary beds is where the blood is going to do the gas exchange. So it's going to get rid of the CO2 that it has, and it's going to get more oxygen. And then you can see here, once we're in the capillary beds up here, our blood now is, in this diagram, is changing to red. That means red means that it's been oxygenated, right? It is oxygen rich, CO2 poor. So from the capillary beds, we're going to go into the pulmonary vein, and the pulmonary vein is pumping oxygen into, or blood, oxygenated blood into the left atrium. From the left atrium, it goes into the left ventricle of the heart, and then it gets pumped into the aorta. The aorta is going to then distribute this to the capillary blood beds in your body. So taking the blood and distributing it to various parts of your body to give oxygen-rich blood. Once the blood gets there, right, we're going to have more gas exchange occurs. So we have more gas exchange. That gas exchange is going to lead to our blood becoming oxygen-rich, or oxygen poor and CO2 rich. So now we're in blue. So we're taking then all this deoxygenated blood into the vena cava, which is going to put it into the right atrium. And that is the journey of the blood through your body. All right, that is all we're going to cover today. You can see the flashcards are right here. You've got a bunch of terms to learn. Once you made your flashcards, submitted those on Canvas, there are also 2 review games that you can play to help you sort of remember the chambers, arteries, important parts of the heart.